The fuck was that, man? That shit blew my head.
Lord, the time of the end 12, at that time Michael will appear. He is the great prince of the angels. He guards your people.
The fuck was that, man? That shit blew my head. The fuck was that, man? That shit blew my head. The fuck?
Well, don't worry about it. When I'll put it in modern terminology, while you prayed that 4 hours, I pre-programmed your spirit and your mind. You cannot fail. You won't make the wrong decision. I've already pre-programmed you. You just go with the flow. I'm going to direct you. I'll call circumstances and providential happenings, and you'll be moved right into my time and purpose. You're already pre-programmed. You can't miss it.
I like that. How about you? You're pre-programmed and can't miss it. But another thing you said interested me. Right from the get-go, you were speaking more than one language.
Yeah.
Whereas most believers that speak in supernatural languages, they stay with one language their whole life.
I have a language when I go to warfare that I speak. When I'm just talking to God in another language. When I'm interceding in another language. When I'm worshiping in another language.
But I'm intrigued with the angel, Archangel Michael. You had a private audience with him. How come I didn't?
Well, because of my calling to be for the last 20 years, I've led people in warfare to destroy the works of the devil. And like in 92 to 2001, I traveled all over the Pacific Rim nations, led them in the warfare to stop the devil's plans for World War III.
Mind, for lack of better words, but it elevated my understanding. And he looks at me and he says, "Hello, my name is Michael." I was snatched up off of my feet.
Anyone who doesn't believe in the existence and activity of Satan and the fallen angels is a heretic, in plain English. You know, I talk that way sometimes, forgive me. but that's the way it is.
Well, it'd be easier to forgive if you were sorry, but I know you're not sorry.
No, but
you mean it.
That's a doctrine of the faith. The existence and activity of Satan and the fallen angels. The Holy Pope John Paul II's catechesis on the book of Genesis was excellent concerning that. I've had personal experiences. The first 3 years after my conversion, it was a daily battle, both ordinary and extraordinary. And I could tell you stories all night long, but we don't have time. How do you deal with that? Well, I'll be honest with you. For about 2 years, I slept with the light on, with a holy water bottle in one hand and a rosary in the other. That's how scared I was. St. Michael the Archangel and Padre Pio were my two main protectors. And once again, from a place of tremendous fear, almost terror. Jesus, I trust in you. Hail Mary.
Is being kept out of the loop regarding details on the president's itinerary for the Bay Area, and that is typically not the case. However, we have confirmed that the president will be here visiting the Bay Area in just a few hours. He will host a re-election campaign fundraisers. Tickets for today's luncheon cost anywhere between $1,000 per person to $100,000 per couple. The latter option included a chance to dine with President Trump and take a photo with him, according to the event invitation. KPIX5's Joe Vasquez spoke to Harmeet Dillon last night, a California Republican committee woman who's with Trump's re-election campaign, about today's plans.
The people attending the event, do they know where it is?
They know where they're supposed to go to be taken to the event, but
literally get on a bus.
There'll be some shuttles, but for security reasons, that is not being publicized.
So they won't know till the last second?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Protesters told us that this Trump chicken balloon will be on display today as they call out the president for not disclosing details of his trip here. More than 200 people are expected to meet at Lincoln Park in Los Altos.
Why does a president, if he's so popular, if he's so beloved, as he tweets all the time, why does he need to hide where he's going? Only a chicken Trump would hide.
The California Republican Committee defended the president for not revealing his planned location, saying he is not made very welcome here by law enforcement or city leaders. The last time President Trump... The California Republican Committee defended the president for not revealing his planned location, saying he is not made very welcome here by law enforcement or city leaders.
That many will be deceived by the Antichrist. Many will. And many will be offended at God because God allows the Antichrist to continue for 3.5 years, and seemingly the Antichrist prospers while he's persecuting the people of God. And this is going to offend God, even some of God's people. It's interesting that in Matthew 24, which again is the primary chapter of which Jesus taught on the end times, he gives more in this chapter than anywhere else. He emphasizes the need to avoid deception even more than the warning about persecution and tribulation. I mean, when we think of the end times, we think tribulation, persecution. Jesus said, well, there's something more important to be warned about. That's deception. He emphasized deception more than any other theme in this chapter of Matthew 24, the very chapter where he points people to Daniel. Look here, he mentions it 4 times, and I have it referenced here in Matthew 24, verse 4 and 5, verse 11 and verse 24. Paragraph C. I think it's remarkable that God raised up a prophet, a forerunner prophet, 2,500 years ago, as a gift to the generation the Lord returns. And nobody knows exactly when that is. We know we're getting closer to it. But God raised up a man 2,500 years ago and gave him 4 major visions at the end of his life, of which the primary theme is the Antichrist, so that God's people would understand the nature and the purpose of this man. God doesn't want the people of God to yield to deception. Notice I got 4 things here. Deception, fear, being seduced into compromise, or offended at God's leadership. And so God says, I'm going to give you ample information before it ever happens, 2,500 years plus in advance. And I'm going to give you clarity about it, so that you will not yield to deception. You will not yield to fear. You don't need to yield to fear. You understand my purpose for this man. Don't compromise in that hour, and don't be offended at God's leadership. Paragraph D. The Lord wants, Jesus pointed to Daniel as the prophet to study, and the abomination of desolation, which is all about the Antichrist. And Gabriel's first appearance was related to the Antichrist and the abomination of desolation. Now, again, Gabriel only appears 4 times in Scripture. And every time he appears, it's something very significant to the Messiah. Very significant to the coming of the Messiah. And the first time, it's the opponent it's the false Christ who's going to try to deceive not just the nations, but the body of Christ to fall away from the true Christ. So it's loyalty to the true Christ is at the core of the reason for this vision. That people, even the elect, would not be deceived and draw back from their loyalty to the true Christ. That's at the very heart of this. Paragraph B. Now look what Gabriel says. We're going to look at verse 17 to 26. I've got it edited down here. Now notice, 4 times in 7 verses, Gabriel makes it clear this vision is about the end times. This is Gabriel talking. We're not talking about a Bible teacher. Gabriel. Gabriel's really good at interpreting prophecy. Verse 17. Gabriel said to me, understand, Son of Man. Now notice, the vision refers to the time of the end, number 1. Verse 19. And he said, look, Daniel, I'm making known to you what will happen in the latter time of the indignation. So that's the second time he says it, at the latter time. For at the appointed time the end shall be. That's the third reference. Verse 26. And the vision of the evenings and the mornings, that's the vision of verse 14. It refers to many days in the future. Oppressors have reached their fullness. What a statement from Gabriel. When sinners reach their fullness of human potential of evil. When transgressors reach their fullness. That is one of the most terrifying statements in the Bible related to human activity. I mean, that is a terrifying statement. When transgressors reach their fullness, it will go beyond any other generation in history, the depth of perversion and darkness that human beings will operate in. But the glorious part is on the exact opposite spectrum. This opposite end of the spectrum is the body of Christ will walk in unity, in love, and bright righteousness like no time ever in history. Beloved, sexual perversion not only will go to deeper depths of perversion, it will pervade the societies of the earth. Now, in the book of Revelation, the name of the Antichrist is most prominent name of the Antichrist. Well, not just in the book of Revelation, but in the whole of the Bible, the most prominent name for the Antichrist is the beast. He's called the beast 36 times in the book of Revelation. He's only called the Antichrist one time as the Antichrist of the whole of the Bible in 1 John. In other places, he's called the man of lawlessness, the man of sin, son of perdition. But he's called the beast mostly. And the reason he's called a beast, one reason, it will be impossible to negotiate with him for mercy. I mean, the greatest reason to give leniency, he won't do it. He has no capacity for mercy. And his inward makeup will be absolutely devoid of mercy. He will be a beast. No reasoning, most cruel in him, in terms of to give leniency and mercy. He'll be the most cruel man that ever walked the earth, but he will masquerade initially as a man of peace who loves the goodwill of man. It says here that this man will have fierce features and he will understand sinister schemes. What does it mean that he knows sinister schemes? Well, he'll understand he'll discern the evil motives of men. When men are trying to trick him, because undoubtedly the kings of the earth, as he's rising up and even in power, everyone's negotiating with an angle. He will understand all of their schemes. Nothing will be able to be pulled over. No deception will work against him. And sinister schemes, he'll be able to solve complex problems. I think that sinister schemes has a number of different facets to it. Every one of these phrases. Remember, Gabriel is giving every one of these phrases, and coming from the lips of Gabriel, every one of them is filled with meaning. He'll solve complex problems, sinister schemes in the natural realm, political, military, economic dilemmas, and schemes and plans and hindrances and roadblocks. By demonic spirits, he will be able to see through to the solution and see the deception or any kind of sinister activity even being presented towards him. And he'll be able to devise sinister schemes by this demonic power.
The Iranian regime is the leading state sponsor of terror. It exports dangerous missiles, fuels conflicts across the Middle East, and supports terrorist proxies and militias such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda. Over the years, Iran and its proxies have bombed American embassies and military installations, murdered hundreds of American service members, and kidnapped, imprisoned, and tortured American citizens. The Iranian regime has funded its long reign of chaos and terror by plundering the wealth of its own people. No action taken by the regime has been more dangerous than its pursuit of nuclear weapons and the means of delivering them. In 2015, the previous administration joined with other nations in a deal regarding Iran's nuclear program. This agreement was known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. In theory, the so-called Iran deal, was supposed to protect the United States and our allies from the lunacy of an Iranian nuclear bomb, a weapon that will only endanger the survival of the Iranian regime.
And for 10 years, the UN imposed sanctions. The deal, reached in 2015, brought together the permanent members of the UN Security Council and the EU.
It is a great honor for us to announce that we have reached an agreement on the Iranian nuclear issue.
And it was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
A shared commitment to peace and to join hands in order to make our world safer.
Iran agreed to do away with large parts of its nuclear program and allow international inspectors to monitor what was left. In return, the international community agreed to lift the sanctions, allowing Iran to do business, sell oil, and recover $100 billion of assets frozen in banks abroad. But not everyone was happy. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister in particular, said Iran could not and cannot be trusted.
The Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies.
And the Europeans say the deal isn't perfect, but it is working, and that it would be crazy to tear it up. Some say it's actually the Americans who are not abiding by the deal.
The agreement was so poorly negotiated that even if Iran fully complies, the regime can still be on the verge of a nuclear breakout in just a short period of time. The deal's sunset provisions are totally unacceptable. If I allowed this deal to stand, there would soon be a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Everyone would want their weapons ready by the time Iran had theirs. Making matters worse, the deal's inspection provisions lack adequate mechanisms to prevent, detect, and punish cheating, and don't even have the unqualified right to inspect many important locations, including military facilities.
Top officials were very much in favor of the deal, but only one still holds their office.
If we can determine that this is in our best interest, then clearly we should stay with it.
Americans agree with the Secretary of Defense. A recent poll shows a majority of respondents back the agreement.
Of the opinion that the JCPOA is a first step.
But Trump believes he can negotiate better terms.
They are going to want to make a new and lasting deal, one that benefits all of Iran and the Iranian people.
The original deal imposed strict limits and monitoring of Iran's nuclear program. Iran was forced to get rid of the vast majority of the uranium it had already enriched, as well as get rid of most of the centrifuges that it used to enrich that uranium. Under the deal, Iran also couldn't enrich uranium past the threshold for producing nuclear energy, which is significantly lower than the threshold for medical uranium and weapons-grade uranium. The UN's nuclear agency has verified that Iran complied with the deal, which is also what makes the US leaving so significant, especially right now on the cusp of negotiations with North Korea over its own nuclear program.
In fact, at this very moment, Secretary Pompeo is on his way to North Korea in preparation for my upcoming meeting with Kim Jong-un.
But here's the thing. If you're the North Korean government, and especially if you're Kim Jong-un, and you're watching what just happened with the Iran deal, why would you believe that if you struck a deal with President Trump, that the next president would stick to it? If you've just seen, literally, the United States tear up the previous deal they'd signed with the country to get that country to give up its nuclear program. And that's why President Trump's decision to pull out the Iran deal is so dangerous. Iran. So this isn't just a blow diplomatically, it's also a blow financially to many of our closest allies around the world.
Mr. President, how does this make America safer? How does this make America safer?
Thank you very much. This will make America much safer.
And their partners last night at the White House for dinner. The gathering came amid concerns about tensions with North Korea and the Iran nuclear deal. During a photo op in the White House dining room, President Trump made this puzzling comment.
You guys know what this represents? Well,
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be calm before the storm.
And now the president was asked again what he meant by calm before the storm, and he responded, "You'll find out." The White House has not clarified the comments further. Mr. Trump faces an October 15th deadline on the Iran nuclear deal. He is expected to refuse to certify that Iran is in compliance. CBS News White House and senior foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan joins us now. She's at the White House. I share the question that was raised in that room, Margaret. What storm is the president referring to?
The White House is refusing to clarify what the president meant, and if you play out that full tape, you had reporters repeatedly say to the president, "Sir, what storm? Which storm? Are you talking about Iran? Are you talking about ISIS? What are you referring to?" It's a very unusual statement, and it's one that raises a lot of concern, not necessarily the people in that room, but here in Washington and around the world. It's not something that an American president does typically to sort of tease the idea of an impending crisis. Typically, it's one you try to play down and express you're in control of, but clearly the president was trying to send a message of strength, one he constantly refers to as one of the things that differentiates him. He often trots out his military, as you saw with that dinner. He was standing alongside all the combatant commanders, all the big military leaders here in the United States gathered with him here. This is often something that's done behind closed doors, but President Trump wanted the press there and wanted to make that statement. It was deliberate.
Have come up with a solution that's really, really, I think, very good. Now, I have to tell you, it's an unbelievable